Although the place still has bouts of corruption, malnutrition, and poverty, it is one of the fastest growing economies of the world, and they have Asian guys in there that look nothing like me. Anyways, without further ado, let's grab a blanket, turn off your lights for 12 true scary ghost stories found in India. It's a place we would all like to explore. Parallel Dimension. My name is Ravish. I'm from India. This incident took place 10 years back, maybe in 2005, and until date I haven't found any answers what actually happened with me and my friend. It happened like this one summer evening. My friend Anke came to my place like every day. We chatted for some time, then we decided to go for a ride to a dam not too far away. It was around 7:50 p.m. We left. I was riding the bike and my friend seated behind me. In half an hour we reached that turn, which cuts from highway towards the dam. My eyes were on fuel meter as my bike was running on reserve petrol. We were on our way and were amazed to see no other fellow going towards or coming out. Just one man on bicycle passed and I pranked. How ghastly he's looking. He was a tall guy and was wearing full white dress from turban to dhoti. As we went further in, I kept on checking that millimeter which was stuck on speed 40, and I was worried about the distance as I don't want to be stuck in such a place. We kept on talking and chatting the whole way, and were the only fellows who were on that road. I asked him, "Is it like this every day?" He said, "No, it's not like this." I wonder why no one was around there at the time. My meter's arrow was still stuck on 40 speed, with reading stuck too. Finally, we reached the dam and was shocked to see not a single person over there with all the shops closed. I wonder why it's like this at this time of day. It's only 8:40, and I've heard from my other friends, people are in good numbers until 11 o'clock, and not a single person was there, not even a bird, nor an animal. Even the shops were all closed. I said to my friend that I'm not having a good feeling, and I'm in no mood to stay there anymore. He agreed. I turned my bike back to that road from where we came, and to my surprise, that meter which was stuck started working again. The reading jumped 8 kilometers ahead to where it got stuck. I was all puzzled. Why was it like this? As we were walking back, we kept on talking. Suddenly, at one turn, my friend stopped speaking at all. He was again and again turning back. I don't know why. I asked him what's the matter. He said, "Just drive us out of here as fast as possible." I speeded up, and we reached my home at around 9:20 p.m. My friend started his bike and went back to his home, and I went inside mine. At around 10:30, he called me on my phone and asked if I noticed anything weird over there. I said yes, something happened. He said, "Tell me yours and I'll tell you mine." I told him about the meter, how it got stuck, and then suddenly jumped 8 digits. He told me that on that turn where he stopped talking, he heard someone calling him by his name. He heard it 3-4 times, and he saw no one around, but the voices were still there. He asked if I had had a look at that bicycle man. I said I just noticed his clothes. He then told me that that guy had no eyes. It was all black as he passed, staring at us. I was in fear, and I asked him to meet me the next day. Next day, he came to my place around 1 in the afternoon, and we decided to go to that dam again at daytime and inquire all of this with the shopkeeper as we saw shops there last night. We left my place and reached there. It was all crowded there. I parked my bike, we went to one shop and asked the shopkeeper at around what time shops get closed every day. He told us around 10:30 at night. Then I asked him why were they closed so early last night. He said, "Are you kidding? They were all open until 10:30, and he himself was there until that time." We told him that we came there last night, but no one was there, just the two of us. He replied inquiring us, "Are we drunk or what?" He again told us that he was there until 10:30. We got so shocked by his reply, and we rechecked it with other shopkeepers too. They all said the same thing. We didn't stay there long and came back with a shock of our life. Now I have a question. What actually happened with us? Were we there? Where were we? Were we in some loophole or what was that? It's been 10 years with this question, and it still hits our heads. One more thing. That night was a full moon night, but I still have no idea what just happened over there with us. The T Road. I've been a silent listener for the past 2 or 3 years to this site. Always interested in listening to real-life paranormal stories and movies too, but never wanted it to happen to me at any cost. Love this site. Addictive too. So anyways, worked up the courage to write my first experience. I live in Chennai, South India, in a place called Mogapur. We moved in 10 years ago. I'm not sensitive to anything even close to being paranormal. This incident is about a particular road which leads to my street, a particular spot to be precise. In India, especially south, there are beliefs and notions that a spirit resides in neem trees, and that T roads are always bad luck. No idea if either is true, but usually Hindus have a small temple where the roads meets and in neem trees. So moving to the incidents, I work for an IT firm in OMR. It's a long distance from where I live, so always end up coming home late. And usually the road leading to my street is deserted, and though it had streetlights, it would be still dark. A neem tree was situated right in the intersection of the T road. One day I was walking home around 11 p.m. at night. When I reached the T intersection, all the dogs on the road started running towards the neem tree and started barking at the tree. It was quiet until then, and all the dogs were minding their own business up until I walked near that tree. It freaked me out, and I almost ran all the way home. A few months later, I was going home late as usual, this time driving a car. Road deserted as usual at around 11:30. The moment I crossed the T intersection, I felt an urge to look back, so I glanced in the rearview mirror, where I saw someone who looked like a young female crossing the road slowly and just vanished when I turned around. Freaking the daylights out of me, stepped on it, and never looked back until I reached home. It doesn't happen during the day or when someone is with me, only during nights that I feel someone is in the car when I cross the intersection until I reach home. I don't walk much now since I have a vehicle, so whenever I'm late and I get to cross the intersection until I reach my streets, I get the feeling of having company in the car. Sorry for the long narration. I have never written anything this long, even for a book report. Wanted to give a context on my culture to get a better picture. If it is not clear, I would be happy to explain again in the comments. Not sure if this is irrelevant though, or just me being a scaredy cat with all the stories I've taken to my head. The creepy images on the wall. This is my first story on this website. Please don't mind my English, as I am too weak at it. So it begins like this. I was overwhelmed with grief as my mother and I quarreled with each other on some serious matters. Exasperated and sad, I laid on my bed, crying my heart out. I gradually indulged on a profound slumber. It was 5 o'clock in the morning when I was awakened from my siesta, as I suddenly experienced a stomach ache. The dark hue of the night was weakened by the dim light of my night lamp. To my horror, I saw a body of a black cat sitting just beside my bed. Clutching my stomach as it ached severely, I rushed out of the room as fast as my legs could carry me and shrieked aloud. On hearing my shout, my mother quickly came to me and comforted me. I then switched on the lights and lay down on my bed, shutting my eyes forcibly but to no success. I finally opened my eyes and was terrified by the scary images that appeared on the front wall. Initially, I saw a skeleton, which seemed to have been engraved himself on the wall. It finally began to move his limbs. Then, there was a creepy spiked figure of a ghost face, followed by the figure of a little girl requesting for some kind of help. This was followed by the trail of some creepy creature staring at me angrily. I was terribly horrified, but fortunately, I did not experience any sort of sleep paralysis. I started chanting the sacred Hanuman Chalisa, and the figure soon began to diminish and finally disappeared. I rushed inside my dressing room and grabbed my sacred amulets. Everything went back to normal. Next day, I told my mother what had happened, and she was too taken aback on hearing this incident. I am pretty sure that I was not dreaming, as I was completely conscious. The next morning, my grandfather, who slept in the room situated next door, told me that he experienced an unaccustomed heat inside his room that very night. I have read in the stories of this website that, in the presence of supernatural entity, the temperature of the room becomes blazing hot or icy cold. My house is an ancestral house, and I was living there since 15 years ago, but had never experienced such a thing before. I request you to please comment freely and advise me how to get out of this situation. That girl. My profession is a screenplay writer, so this is a real-life ghost encounter that happened 2 years back. Second-year students at ISM Dhanbad had organized an inter-school IQ competition between the schools of Jharkhand, and after clearing 2 rounds, I was selected for the 3rd round, which was going to be held in Penam Auditorium. Me and my dad went to Dhanbad and stayed in a guest house near to the railway station. The guest house charged 500 rupees for a double-bed bedroom. The next day after the event got over, my dad had a conversation with a man who too was staying in a hotel near the guest house in which we were staying in. As we had to catch the same bus in the morning, my dad decided to stay in the same hotel that night. We went to the reception, and the person sitting out there indicated something to his employee. He indicated something which I was not able to understand, and I was feeling really sleepy. I didn't want to indulge in thinking about something weird about it. The employee showed us the room, and to our surprise, it was well furnished and was double the size of the previous room that we stayed in. What surprised us was the fact that the cost we had to pay was just 350 rupees a night, even cheaper. So, we willingly took the keys and booked that room. Now, what happened next was something that put me to deep thoughts. The employee who gave us the keys showed up 3 or 4 times within an hour just to interrogate about the situation. I thought that why on earth was he doing all of this? I was rejoiced that I was in a place at the 13th spot in that event and left all those things that bothered me. We watched the Discovery Channel for half an hour and then went to sleep. My dad slept, but I was awake as I wasn't able to sleep because I was still indulged in my thoughts of me and my prizes. Honestly speaking, I was night dreaming with my eyes wide open. And as time passed, I started feeling something strange with my hair. They were being pulled down by some pseudo force. I thought it was happening because of the tiresome day I had, but slowly, the force started increasing and started to pain me. I felt uneasy and turned sideways. After a few moments, when it started to become unbearable, I got up and turned on the lights. To my surprise, the pillow was a mess with my hair strangling all around it. This really scared me, and all the earlier thoughts started a PowerPoint presentation before my eyes. I turned off the lights and went back to sleep again. Sleep? I wasn't sleeping. I just wanted to make sure what was happening out there. To my surprise, my dad was having a sound sleep just beside me. I started to call the unknown being that was troubling me. I was pretty sure that there was something spooky out there in the corner of the room. And after repeated calling, mentally not orally, it appeared, and you know what? I wasn't startled, but yes, it did send chills down my spine, but I kept calm because my dad was just beside me, and that boosted up my confidence, and I started asking it questions as to why it or she was disturbing me, and a flashback started. Man, what I saw made me sad rather than scaring the shit out of me. That poor girl was raped and murdered in the room by some bloody hooligans. And all that it wanted was someone to hear her pain. It showed me the window behind the curtains from where the dead body was thrown. I didn't dare go get up from my bed. Rather, I expressed my condolences with her and prayed for the peace of her soul, though I am an atheist. She left me without troubling me any further. Next morning, I went back home. I still feel sorry for her, and may the Supreme provide peace to her soul. Thank you for listening so attentively. Burnt man's soul. This scary incident started after my marriage on July 2007. Just after getting married, I've shifted to a rented house in New Delhi with my husband. This house was built spacious, had 3 floors with a roof. We took the second floor on rent. After 1 month of shifting, I started feeling some weird things like strange noises and apparitions of a burnt man covered with a red maroon blanket. And soon things got much scarier. At late nights, I started feeling like someone pulling my legs and my hair. These things started happening on a daily basis now, but my husband never supported me on believing such incidences. The family living on ground floor has shifted somewhere else, and thereafter a lady shifted on ground floor against them, but she has left the house in between 3 days after feeling strange things. Her so-called guru told her to leave the place as soon as she can. Then, I started taking things much seriously and spoken to the landlady, who was living on the first floor alone. Her husband and 2 sons remain outstation due to their travel business. Then she revealed to me that her elder son also got crazy some time back and had done lots of puja and haven to make him normal as before. And her son still not as normal as before, and that she could not sleep without chanting holy books and mantra. After confirming the situation to be in a haunted house, I prepared myself to fight against the devil spirit. One night, my husband came late at night, and we just had our dinner and got into bed. Just after 50 minutes, my husband started shouting, "Save me, he is taking me along with," and started pointing out the window side, and said that the burnt man is standing nearby. His eyes were rolling itself, and he fainted suddenly. Then I chanted some prayers. After 15 minutes, he woke up and said, "Why, you are not sleeping until this time?" I have looked him in the eyes and shocked that he did not even remember anything about what had happened to him just now, and asking me why I was awake until this late. Then I told him the story and which happened to him, but he stared at me after hearing the whole incident and said, "You are joking. Nothing happened to me. I am okay. You just go to bed and sleep." That time, I decided to leave the place as soon as I can, and shifted within a week to a new house. Afterwards, I have not seen any apparition spirits and felt nothing at night. But the strange thing is that my husband saw the same burnt man who I described to him earlier. I don't know what to say about it, but this is a true scary incident which happened to me just after my marriage. Scary days. Running Naked Man. A few days back, I came to know about this website. I want to share my horrifying experience experienced by me at my grandfather's place 3 years ago. And he advised me to share this incident so that the whole world will know what happened. This incident took place nearly 3 years ago, in the mid of April, as my exams were over, so the whole family decided to visit grandparents' place. My grandparents live in a small village behind about 200 kilometers from Gwalior to the heart of India. It was surrounded by thick forest area on one side, and on the other side by the dangerous lake famously known as the Chambal. I love to visit this marvelous place again and again, until that incident took place. Me and the neighbors at my native place love to ride the bike, and love to visit the nearby places driving on bike. That day was not a normal day. Me and my friend Ankush, as usual, were riding to a nearby place known as the Fort of King. It's a beautiful place with all the beautiful carvings on it, which one could get easily admissed upon in the beauty of the fort, and it was so mesmerizing that by 6:30 p.m., we were there only, which was not right according to the villagers, and we, the young blood, always ignore them, as we were not believing neither ghosts or nor the paranormal activities. So, we decided to stay at that place until 9 p.m. at night, which proved to be the biggest and most horrifying experience of my life, which turned my life upside down, which still freezes me. After 9, we hardly saw any changes, so we decided to return back to home as we're traveling through the forest. I don't know what happened, my bike suddenly stopped, and even after hundreds of attempts made by me and my friend, it was not starting. So we decided to park the bike there, only when we start walking around, as it was hardly 5 kilometers away from home. To pass the time, we started chatting about the villagers and that there's such a noob to believe on such silly things, but nearly half the distance was passed, and Ankush heard a horribly crying voice. So he asked, "Did you hear anything?" And I was like, stop kidding me. And I walked faster as it was nearly 11 at night. And after 2 to 3 times yelling at him, we started walking again. But after some time, a low whispered voice walked through my ears and said, "Get back! Danger! Danger!" But I thought it was just an illusion of my mind, and I ignored that voice. But after traveling some distance, Ankush and me heard the same noise again, and we got shivers down our spines. And we started running towards our house, but in the middle, Ankush fell down and the noise got very stronger. After gathering full courage, I picked up Ankush and made him rest for a while. The noise was getting stronger and stronger. As it was coming nearby, we got exhausted by all the means we could do by leaves and bushes, etc. After that, I saw a man was running naked with all the cuts on his body and yelling, "Get back! Danger! Danger!" Seeing that scenario, our bodies started shivering, and slowly, we started moving towards our house. By 3 in the morning, we reached our house, and we were shivering with fever of more than 104 degrees at home. And they were all asking, what happened? But we were not in that state to speak anything. The condition was like, we could not utter a single word. The next day, grandfather came to us and asked what had happened, and we spoke our hearts out and started crying. Grandfather wiped our tears and said that 200 years ago, the Chambal was home for Naxalites, and they used to plunder everything and whoever refused them, and used to torture them and make them run naked. My grandfather said, "The man you saw was, I think, the soul of one of the people who had been tortured by them." This incident made me believe that ghosts exist. And then the boy in me spoke. "I have drawn a certain fascination for your website, as it facilitates a medium for people to pen down their horror stories. I am new here, and thus it is my first story. My wedding preparations were in full swing. I, being a bubbly girl and all of 24, was quite upbeat about my future. I was getting married in November 2008. I was in Hyderabad with my cousin brother and his family when my parents summoned me to Jammu in late August. It pertained to mention that it was during this time that Amarnath agitation had taken the city by stride and seize. The protests had taken a violent turn, and the army had taken over. My parents thought it is best for me to cut short my trip and return home, lest I get stranded and be unable to attend my own wedding. I obliged, and one fine day reached home in early September. Since we are a nuclear family, and my brother was studying engineering in Pune, my parents and me would sleep in the same room. So, this particular night, we retired to bed after dinner and had a usual chit-chat session. I slept towards the open end of the bed, and my mother was sleeping beside me. Not after too long, I began to feel quite uncomfortable. All of a sudden, my body became heavy, and it was like my physical self was captured. Since I woke up in the middle of the night, which created commotion, my parents got up and switched on the tube lights, only to find me sitting upright and turning my neck here and there. My mother looked worried and was constantly calling out my name and asking me what happened. I could hear her, but was unable to respond. My father was standing behind me when I turned my neck towards him and said, "I am not my name. I am Rahul." My parents were shell-shocked. They looked blank when that boy in me again spoke up in my mother tongue. "I am Rahul, and I was sent here from the crematorium to harm you. But since you all seem genuinely nice people, I will not harm you. I was sent you by her aunt." He named her, yes, "so that I can ruin your daughter's future. I want mukti. I beg of you, I want mukti." In the meanwhile, my father went to the adjacent puja room to fetch the holy book of Hanuman Chalisa, and both of them started reciting it with utter faith, all the while crying in pain to see me in a horrible condition. This continued for a few minutes, and then I beckoned them to take me to the washroom. I was unable to control myself, so both of them accompanied me. However, we had to cross the puja room and the lobby to reach there. Sadly, I was pretty much conscious all throughout and was aware of what was happening. As soon as I reached the washroom, the entity's grip on me waned and I felt released. But my entire body, especially my neck, was in grave pain. The three of us thereafter started howling. They took me back to the bedroom, where we started to ponder over what had just happened. We felt cheated and at the same time grateful to God. We are a deeply religious family and believe in the power of the Almighty. The next morning, my parents took me to the concerned person who confirmed our suspicion, and I went through ghastly procedures to release the trapped soul. Until we were done, I used to see a black shadow following me everywhere, especially the washroom, and yes, you guessed it right, I did in fact suffer physically, mentally, and emotionally all through the procedure, but luckily for me, the good soul didn't wish to stay behind and was gone soon and for good. I never experienced anything of that sort ever after. FARIYA Palace. After living in apartments for so many years, my father decided that we should get our own home. So, we bought a nice piece of land 11 kilometers from Badlapur city, which I have mentioned in my previous stories. It's away from the city, no human life to be found around. The place is totally deserted and separated from the city life. We built a bungalow on this land. Everything was going well. We got shifted in this bungalow and started living our life. Later, my parents decided to name it FARIYA Palace, and that's when it all began. As soon as our bungalow was named FARIYA Palace, my name is FARIYA by the way, I started falling sick. I couldn't study, I started failing my exams, I had 6 cats, and mysteriously I would find them dead in weird places, and no one could understand their cause of death. I lost my 4 cats in a span of 2 days. All of them found very far from each other, but all had died in the same way. Their mouth open wide, with mud inside it and blood coming out from their butts. I also accidentally started breaking glass I would not understand. I would just be standing and a glass showpiece would fall on its own right in front of my eyes. Even if the thing would fall from a very short height, it would break into a million pieces almost powdered. No mirror would survive in our home, and all of them would accidentally get broken by me. I started noticing that whenever a glass object would break by me, even though I would hardly be touching it, one of my pets would die that very day. This continued for a long time. When we moved in, we had 1 Rottweiler and 6 Rottweiler puppies, 1 Doberman and 6 cats, and within just 2 months, we were left with only 2 cats and 1 Doberman. All the pets were dying without any reason. It is said that whenever a person is going to have some problem or his life is at danger, many times the pet takes all his owner's problems on itself. A pet can even take its owner's death on itself and would die in place of its owner. All my family members started believing that some bad thing was going to happen to me, but my pets took it in on them and died. Later, my mom contacted a Milana. He gave something and asked my mom to dig it in all 4 corners of our fence. After that, none of my pets died. Even after being hit by a passing car, my cat still survived, with minimal injuries. Once I was trying to use my newly bought mobile. I was always trying to take a video. I was standing with my back on the main door of our house and facing towards a passage that leads to the kitchen. I always get a bad feeling about the kitchen. First, because there's no network in our kitchen, no mobile would work there, nor can we get any internet or any networks over there. As soon as my video camera started, I saw a white blurry thing on my screen. It was straight in front of me. I was only able to see it on screen. It was like floating, and really big but had no shape. I stopped recording and saved it. Suddenly, my mobile stopped working and just would not work, and my screen went black. Later, when I tried to see the video, to my surprise, there was no video on my gallery, though I had saved it. When we were new there, at night when I would be in my bed, I would hear my mom calling my name. I would go to her just to realize that she didn't call me at all. This continued for a long time. One day I was fast asleep, and I heard my mom in her most sweetest voice calling my name from outside my room's door. Her voice was killingly sweet, the kind of sweet voice I've never heard in my life. I thought it's morning, and my mom had come to wake me up like she normally does. I woke up and sat in the corner of my bed, just about to get up and open the door. I just thought about checking the time to know if I'm late or what. I pulled my cell only to realize it was 3 a.m. My heart jumped so high, I would feel it in my mouth. I start shivering and pulled my sheets and prayed and eventually fell asleep. I wonder what would have happened if I had opened the door. I can also hear very heavy footsteps above my room at night. I could really feel someone heavily running. This has happened with me earlier in my apartment as well. Sometimes I hear knocks on the wall right behind me, the wall on which I normally rest my back on. The knocks are so sharp as if someone is knocking something from inside the wall, because there's nothing behind that wall and my room is on the first floor and no one can climb in it. My cats are sometimes very scared of entering my room and would just run for their life out from my room. Many a times they would just stare at a blank wall and make weird noises, which cats don't usually make. My one cat in particular would always stare at the blank wall or above my cupboard and would keep meowing and tears would come out of its eyes. I never experienced this in my life. At night, I can sometimes hear someone running in our backyard. It feels as if someone is running, making rounds and around our home inside our fence. I could hear the sounds of leaves crushing and also stamping of feet on our cemented tank. During nighttime, my dog sometimes barks restlessly as if someone is passing from in front of our house, but I could never see anyone. My dogs sometimes run on our terrace as if chasing someone. Sometimes at 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, we would hear our dog running on terrace as if trying to catch someone or maybe playing with someone. It runs making circles as if it is following someone. My mom keeps on hearing knocks on the main door even though we would all be sitting together. She would say, "Go check who it is," and I would say, "But why?" She would be like, "Somebody knocked." She still hears knocks and she keeps on checking only to find no one. But none of us hear anything. This place has no history. It's been open land forever, and we were the first one to build a home on it. I believe that maybe some of our jealous relatives have spelled something on me, but my pets took it all on them. And maybe they're still trying to do stuff, but because we have dug some sacred stuff in all corners of our fence, it has weakened them. But it still continues in a very minimal way. I thought of using a Ouija board, but I don't have the guts to do it, and I never think I will. Tell me what you think about it and what should be done. Comments are welcome. The voice in earplugs. I remember that it happened when I was 13 years old. Me and my family had gone to attend a wedding in Jammu. After the wedding ceremony, we decided to go to my maternal grandma's place. She lives with my aunt and uncle. The uncle has 2 children, one namely X, and the other can be said Y. I don't want to give away their names. There is a huge and deep river nearby. I had often been told about unearthly beings controlling X and another cousin of mine. Well, we had quite fun during the daytime. At night, my real sister, me, and my elder cousin sister Y went to sleep together. Y had a habit of studying at night, so she sat studying while I laid wide awake. She was listening to music when she insisted me to hear it too. She pressed an earplug in my ear and continued her work. I was feeling quite uneasy because I was sleeping near the main door. I felt as if someone was in the kitchen. Note that I could easily see the kitchen from my position. I was so afraid of this feeling that I could not sleep. Suddenly the music stopped, and I heard a manly voice say, "Hello." And then the music began to play again. I looked towards Y to check if she had heard it too. She told me she had. For a while we stayed still. Then she stood up and told me she was going to the bathroom. I had enough time to peek into the kitchen. I could have sworn that the lights were off earlier, but now they were open. I stayed there until Y came and suggested to sleep. I felt uneasy the whole night. I could hear that voice in my head. Midnight corporate meetings. This is another one of my father's stories. It was during the initial days of his career, his first job perhaps. He worked in a jute mill company, which was one of British origin. It was built during the British occupation of India. In this company, they had an annual management meeting, which was held around midnight. I guess it was kept at midnight, considering the convenience of officers in different parts of the world. I do not remember the exact reason of that timing, though. So, that day was my dad's first meeting with the company. Their office was, of course, located inside an old building from the British era, but it was renovated with modern-day equipment and interiors. Just before the meeting started, he decided to use the washroom. They had these automatic motion sensor sliding doors, which led to different parts of the building. On the way to the washroom, there were two. If you cross one, you can see the next door down the corridor. After crossing that one, we'll reach right in front of the washroom. The washroom had the design of a typical commercial washroom, with smaller washrooms inside one big hall with wash-in bins. As my dad reached the first doorway, he saw this tall man walking in front of him. He appeared British. The door opened and closed, and the man walked in and was out of my dad's sight. When Dad crossed the first door, he couldn't see the man anymore. He thought to himself that the man must have crossed the other doorway too, but for that, the man had to walk real fast. It seemed weird, but he didn't think much of it at the moment. As he crossed the second doorway and entered the bathroom, he could hear someone using one of the bathrooms, and realized that the man he saw must be in one, because there was absolutely nowhere else he could have gone. After my dad was done using the washroom, he, just out of curiosity, waited for the man to come out of the washroom. But a long time passed, and the sounds had stopped. My dad had this very strange feeling, and decided to push the door of the washroom. Of course, you guessed it right. There was no one inside. Super scared and sweating, my dad raced back to where the rest of his colleagues were. He was visibly shaken. He found his colleagues mysteriously smiling, seeing his condition. They asked him, "You saw something, didn't you?" When my dad narrated his experience, his colleagues said that it was a very common thing to see that man around on meeting days. In fact, he has been identified as the first owner of the company, after whom the company was named. He was only seen on annual meeting days. Guess he couldn't keep away from hearing the updates and status of the company he founded. Road with Voices. I'm using my brother's name as Jay, and his wife's name is Ren. Last month, my brother celebrated his 5th wedding anniversary in his wife's hometown, near Kohima in Nagaland. Nagaland is a state in the northeastern India, which is famous for its World War Memorial and Hornbill Festival. Being in India and having an extended holiday weekend, I joined them in their joy. Ren accompanied me for sightseeing, and then a visit to her aunt's place in Kohima. Privacy purposes, I'm only going to say it's northern Kohima. We had decided to return before dusk, but due to certain circumstances, we decided to stay a little longer. We had dinner and started off to Ren's home by 8 o'clock. We decided to walk a little distance so as to digest the food. I had a bit too much due to the delicious local cuisine. The road we were walking on was surrounded by trees on both of the sides. It was isolated, and there weren't any people around. I was finding this place a paradise of solitude. I was taking photographs of the deserted road ahead, and Ren was suggesting other places for sightseeing. Just then, while Ren was speaking, a high-pitched voice called out my name from the road behind. It was really high-pitched, and it broke the silence of the road. First reaction, both of us were shocked and looked back. There wasn't a single soul out there. Then I asked Ren if she heard my name being called out. Then she replied that she thought it as her name. Now, my name and hers are in no way similar to have been confused with, but I was sure that it was my name, but that it was weird as the only people who would know my name are Ren's relatives. Were they following us? No, why would they? We were just both standing at the same spot when we heard another shrill voice. It was sort of a woman's or a girl's voice, and this time I definitely heard it saying my name. But the worst part was that it was coming from the other side of the road, the way we were heading towards. I looked at Ren, who had a confused look, and said, "How the hell does she know my name?" To which Ren said, that it was her name that was being called out, rather than mine. That confused me. I clearly heard my name, and she says she was hearing hers. We look at each other, and then Ren gestures me to start walking. We walk, without saying a single word for the next 1 or 2 kilometers, and then Ren stops and looks behind. Judging by footsteps, I stop and look at her and ask what it was. She looks at me, and asked me to walk faster this time. With a straight poker face, we walked, almost sped walked, and reached the local ground from where Ren's brother Kun picked us up in a car. 2 nights later, everything was fine. Due to some of Ren's relatives coming over, Ren and her cousin Mandy had to share the room with me. I was sleeping on the edge of the bed. Ren was in the middle and Mandy to her other side. I remember that night, Ren was really fidgety and kept turning from one side to another. At first I thought she wasn't comfortable being in the middle and was just trying to find the right posture, but soon it became sort of irritating as she was disturbing me as well in that process. After some time, which seemed hours, I heard some murmur and thought it was Ren, who had finally slept and started to snore, and I totally lost my sleep and sat up on the bed. After drinking a little water, I just sat looking outside the window. It was almost dawn, and then something moved. At first, I felt there was some movement outside the window, but then something moved again near the wall on the foot side of the bed. I focused my eyes onto the wall, and then I frickin' realized that it was like a dark shadow of a human figure. The figure was somewhat translucent, but opaque enough to be seen by human eye, and I screamed in fright and I woke both of them, and Mandy switched on the lights. Even Jay and Kun, who were sleeping in the next room, came running. Mandy jumped and opened the door, and they all asked what had happened. I, being horribly scared out of my wits and not knowing what it was, said something was there. At that time I didn't notice it, but Ren was the only one who didn't ask what it was. Everyone calmed me down, and as it was already dawn and I was too shocked, I went to the living room and watched television. After a few moments, Ren came over and sat with me. She looked tired, but she couldn't get any more sleep. After apologizing to her for disturbing her sleep, she instead thanked me for stopping her nightmare. I didn't say anything, as I was feeling weird thinking that why am I being haunted still, but then she said she saw her too, and broke down. My reaction was sort of, who? Whom did you see? What are you saying that it's a she? I felt that it was Evelyn again, but why was she scaring Ren? And then she described everything that happened since that night. She told me that on the night that we heard a voice calling her names, she thought it was some kid, but when I said that I heard my name and she had clearly heard her own, she thought that it was weird. The moment when she had gestured me to walk, she was still not sure what it was, but then after a few kilometers, she heard in her dialect, "I want your child. I want it. Now." With the word now almost seeming like a yell. She looked back, and she saw a thin woman with untidy long hair, wearing almost rags and shreds of dirty clothing. She was really scared at that moment, and as she thought she might even attack us, then before I could ask, she shared with me the fact that Jay and her were trying to have a baby, but they hadn't told anyone yet. And after hearing what she heard and saw, she was shocked and scared to the pit of her stomach. After reaching the house, she discussed this with Jay, and he ruled it out as some insane woman trying to find 2 young ladies on the isolated road, and the child part was a coincidence. But Ren had a very sick feeling. She was feeling sick for the last few weeks, and since the baby talk had been stirred up, she decided to test whether she was pregnant or not. It was positive, and she was 7 weeks pregnant. She didn't want to share the news with the family before the first trimester, and only told Jay about it. On that night, Ren had fallen asleep, only for a few minutes, after which she woke up feeling cold. She pulled her blanket up until her chest, only to find that the blanket had been pulled down after a few moments. Initially, she was frustrated, as she thought maybe Mandy was playing a prank on her, but her blanket kept sliding down towards her feet, which annoyed her. After some time, frustrated with the blanket sliding down, she looked at her side and found Mandy sound asleep. Then she turned her head towards the foot of the bed, and at that moment she saw that figure. She swears that she clearly saw the same woman on the road, right near her foot, and was grinning and staring right at her. She could not believe her eyes. She felt she was breathing her last breath. She then realized that she wasn't a human, but something else, as the figure was translucent, as she could see through her. Instantly, she shut her eyes closed and held her blanket tight and started praying. She kept praying and praying for a long time, and then she felt me getting up. She thought that maybe I was also experiencing the same thing, but then when I screamed, it was the affirmation of somebody being in the room. She feared that it might be some evil entity who is trying to get her attention and something even more precious. And now, that entity coming so near her, inside her house, she felt vulnerable and scared. I was gobsmacked with all this information. I was happy for them and scared too. We both prayed after that, and Jay booked their first return tickets, as Ren insisted on returning to their home on that same day. I left a day after. I am still in contact with her, and she hasn't had any other confrontation with that woman as of yet. One last goodbye. I was 14 years old. My grandmother had gone to her parental house with my grandfather. We were from Punjab, and my grandmother had gone to Delhi to make her makha. One night, we received the news that she was serious and admitted to a hospital. After a day, we got to know that she was living her last days. The doctor had said that she wouldn't live for more than 2 or 3 days. My father also went to Delhi to support my grandfather in his wife's last days. I was very sad, as before my grandmother left for her parental house, I didn't even bid her goodbye, and I probably would never have the chance to see her, even for one last time. Anyways, we have a huge house, and one night it was raining. My mother, my younger brother, and I were the only people in the house. It was around 1 o'clock in the morning. It was all dark. I was sleeping when I had a dream in which I saw my grandmother. In that dream, my grandmother was extremely ill, and I was running around with some cart on which my grandmother was sitting. I was telling her that I would take her to a doctor and that it would all be fine. But she kept saying no. My time is over, and I've just come to say goodbye. She also said sorry for giving us all of so much trouble. I said no, it'll be fine. She said she was going. At that very moment, my sleep was broken by our landline phone ringing. My mother answered the phone and she was talking to my grandfather. He was telling her that my grandmother was no more and had just passed away.